The fire in the great hearth of Winterfell's hall burned low, casting a slow-moving amber glow across rough-hewn tables, and the banners that stirred lazily in draughts that seeped through ancient stone. Eddard Stark stood at a narrow window set deep into the wall, arms folded, eyes drawn northward to where the sky already deepened into violet. He had never been a man given to foreboding. The north itself was warning enough for any mortal heart. Yet, for 3 nights running, sleep had come in fitful spurts, each dream vanishing on waking, leaving only the scent of smoke and the beating of wings. Behind him, Maester Luwin cleared his throat. "Lord Stark, the raven from White Harbor," he said, producing a neatly folded scrap of parchment. "Lord Wyman reports the last of the autumn grain safely stored. Ships from the south bring oranges and pomegranates, luxury for the cold months ahead." Ned accepted the message, scarcely glancing at it. "Good," he said. But his thought ranged elsewhere, toward the crypts, toward the bones of kings in ironwood coffins, toward his own blood, laid in silence beneath the earth. Lyanna, Brandon, father, Dort. Lyanna most of all. Of late, it was her voice he almost heard, not in sorrow, but calling, urgent, like a rider urging him to haste. Outside, the castle stirred with the Endegufte bustle. Smiths quenching glowing steel, stable boys bedding horses, Sir Roderick drilling new recruits in the fading light. Caitlyn's voice drifted in through the half-open door of the solar. Gentle correction for the girl's stitching. A laugh shared with Septa Mordain. Normalcy, order, a fortress against uncertainty. Yet, beneath the courtyard flagstones lay older truths. It began with Rickon's chase. Summer's last warmth clung to the stones when the youngest Stark, hair wild, darted after his wolf across the yard. Shaggy Dog slipped through a half-collapsed grate near the base of the first keep, a part of Winterfell that even stable boys avoided for fear of falling masonry. Rickon, fearless as children are, followed. Caitlyn's cry brought Maester Luwin and 2 guards running, but the grate yawned like a mouth into Blight nor Wolf emerged. Ned was in the training yard then, sparring with Robb. Clang of steel bit through the air. Sweat stung his eyes. Caitlyn's shout reached him only as the echo of his daughter Sansa repeating, "Rickon's gone." In 2 strides, Ned was out of the yard, sword still in hand, forgetting the training helm on his brow. Torch in one fist, he stooped, peering into the jagged hole. "Rickon!" he called, voice booming off stone. Shaggy Dog answered first, a low, throaty growl, not warning but unease. The wolf backed into view, eyes reflecting torchlight. Ned squeezed through. Stones scraped mail. Dust filled his throat. Passages beneath Winterfell wound like veins. They led to storerooms, ice cellars, forgotten chambers whose builders were remembered by no living tongue. Ned found footprints in dust, small boot marks, no more than 5 turns tall. He tracked them down a spiral stair he had never noticed, descending into chill. At a landing, the air changed. It smelled of wet earth and something else. Salt, perhaps, or the sea in winter. He pressed on and came to a door fashioned of weirwood and black iron. The grain of the pale wood swirled in knots like eyes. Shaggy Dog pawed at the base, whining. "Rickon?" Ned murmured. He pushed. The door groaned open on ancient hinges. Inside lay a cavern of green glass. So it seemed, walls dripped with crystals, translucent and luminous, casting emerald radiance over the chamber. At its center rose a dais of fused stone. Upon that dais rested 3 objects, each cradled in crumbling velvet folds. They might have been stones, they might have been hearts, black as night, dark green shot through with pale veins, and the last a deep red flecked with gold. Rickon stood behind the dais, small hands extended, not touching but hovering as though the heat of a forge pushed against his open palms. His eyes were wide yet calm. The glow from the crystals shimmered across his cheeks. "Father," he whispered. "They're singing." No song reached Ned's ear, yet the hairs on his neck prickled. He sheathed ice. The great sword felt somehow an intrusion here, and stepped forward. Heat pulsed off the stones. They were no mere rocks. He had seen likenesses in books Lewin kept. Tales of a time when dragons ruled Valeria. Eggs cast like iron fruit by monsters that breathed living flame. Fire in the north. The notion ripped through him like ice melt. "Rickon," he said, "come away." But Rickon pointed. "It's warm, father. Warm like summer." "Summer ended moons ago," Ned replied, voice soft. "Come." Reluctantly the boy obeyed. Shaggy Dog retreated, but the wolf's black fur bristled. He did not turn his back on the dais. Ned blew out a breath. He should order the chamber sealed, tell no one until sunrise, consult Lewin, send to Old Town. Yet his feet carried him to the dais. He extended a gauntleted hand. Heat licked through the steel like water on a griddle. He snatched it back, flexing fingers. The eggs pulsed. He felt that more than saw, slow, immense, a heart's beat unheard. Lyanna's voice came again in memory. "Promise me, Ned. Promise me." For a moment, he thought the chamber hissed the words aloud. "Promise me." He backed away, gathered Rickon, and fled the way he had come. In the Godswood that night, Ned stood before the heart tree while the moon rode high. He told no one yet of the eggs. Caitlin knew only that Rickon had been found safe. The boy slept now, clinging to Shaggy Dog. But Ned felt the weight of secrets like chainmail upon his soul. "Old gods," he said, "I've never prayed for dragons." The weirwood's sappered eyes regarded him without mercy. He remembered the heat, remembered Lyanna dying with fever in her dark hair. No maester's art had saved her. Fire had taken her in the end, fire in the blood. What if that fire had another face? Wind sighed through red leaves. He recalled Robert's coming visit. The king sought a hand and a friend. If dragons stirred in the north, the realm would tremble. The Targaryens were gone, yet not gone, their memory still a wound. Robert's hatred slept lightly. The heart tree gave no answer. 2 days passed. On the second morning, frost rimed every wall. Servants entered the hall, whispering of breath that smoked indoors. But in Rickon's chamber a strange thing occurred. The hearth burned brighter, though no fresh logs had been set. The boy had a flush in his cheeks. Sweat dampened his hair. Caitlin called for Maester Lewin, fearing ague. Yet when Lewin laid a cool hand on Rickon's brow, he frowned. "He's warm, my lady, yet not feverish. Heart beats strong. I find no malady." Rickon opened his eyes. "The stones are singing still," he murmured. "They want out of the dark." Ned, present, stiffened. Caitlin looked sharply at her husband, reading things left unsaid. That night in their bedchamber she pressed him. He confessed, slowly, what he had found. "The north is no place for dragon's fire," she said when he'd finished. Her fingers knotted bedsheet linen. "If Robert learns, he must not." Ned's voice was iron. "Nor the Lannisters, nor the small folk. The wall is woes enough. So what will you do?" He stared into darkness. "Pray they never hatch." But some prayers the gods refused. Deep beneath Winterfell, cracks sounded like the settling of stone. The dormant furnace that was the eggs began its slow awakening. Lewin's lanterns revealed flakes of shell peeling away in places, tiny fissures, an amber glow within. Lewin counseled removing them from the keep, perhaps to the wall where the cold might snuff them. But Ned, gazing on what might undo the realm if mishandled, could not decide. Then Bran climbed. High in the broken tower he lay dreaming, between sky and stone, when a roar thundered from below. A muffled, distant sound, like earth breaking open. Birds scattered on the rising air. Bran sat up, heart hammering. He sensed rather than saw a plume of warmth drifting through cracks, faint yet undeniable. He clambered down, swift as any squirrel. At the courtyard he met Jon, silent and watchful. "Did you hear?" Bran asked. "Hear what?" "Something strange, like thunder beneath our feet." Jon frowned. "I heard steel, Sir Roderick drilling," he said, but as they spoke, the ground seemed to hum. Ghost, at Jon's side, lifted his muzzle and whined. Ned emerged from the tower steps then, gray cloak swirling. His face looked a winter older than the day before. He ordered the courtyard cleared of all but family and his most trusted men. Catelyn protested keeping secrets from bannermen, but he held firm. What happened next passed into whispered memory, long before winter truly came. They gathered in the chamber of green crystal. Ned, Catelyn, Luwin, Robb, Jon, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon, Sir Roderick, Theon, and old Nan, who had begged entrance, claiming a right to see the stuff of her tail. The air inside shimmered with heat. The crystals no longer glowed green alone. Ribbons of orange chased within them. The 3 eggs lay on cracked velvet, fissures spreading like spider webs. Rickon stepped forward. Ned's hand fell heavy on the boy's shoulder but could not hold him back. "It's all right," the boy whispered, voice clear. "They're coming." A sharp report rang, shells splitting. Steam whistled through the chamber, wet and searing. The first egg burst open. From its jagged halves slithered a creature no bigger than a cat, scaled midnight, wings folded close, eyes pinpoints of molten gold. It coughed smoke, shook itself, and emitted a high keening trill. Sansa gasped. Arya took a step, curiosity blazing. Robb's hand went to sword hilt, though the look on his face was wonder, not fear. The second egg cracked, and a green hatchling clawed free. Emerald and jade intermingled upon scales slick with birth fluid. Third, deep red, split apart with a flash like embers. There they stood, 3 dragons, the first to breathe the thawed air of Westeros in more than a century. Hot tears sprang unbidden to Ned's eyes. Lyanna's voice, softer now, faded on a breeze, only he felt. "Promise me." Was this what she had desired? He could not tell, yet promise held him always. Promises to his sister, to Robert, to the realm. Catelyn squeezed his hand. He sensed her tremble not with fear, but with the weight of history stumbling into their lives. Jon knelt, ghost at his side. The white direwolf and the black dragonling regarded each other in stillness. Then the dragonling flicked out a forked tongue and incredibly nestled against Jon's gloved palm. A shudder ran through the air, as if Winterfell itself exhaled. Word would not be contained long. Heat rose through walls. Torches needed no lighting. Snow that dusted courtyards melted into mist by mid-morning. Servants whispered of sorcery. Ravens carried rumors faster than Ned's riders. He summoned bannermen sworn to secrecy. The Glovers, the Manderleys, Lady Barbary Dustin, the Umbers. In the great hall, he revealed the dragons, still tiny, though growing fast, sharper claws each dawn. Some knelt, some crossed themselves, some fled the hall in panic. But all heard when Ned swore. The dragons would be guarded, studied, bound neither to conquest nor rebellion, unless doom called. Yet outside the north, ravens winged to King's Landing, despite his best efforts. In the Red Keep, Varys listened. In Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister's eyes narrowed. Across a narrow sea, in the free city of Braavos, a girl named Daenerys, last of her line, dreamed of children born of fire. Far north, beyond the wall, something colder than ice opened lidless eyes, stirred by the scent of flame. Weeks passed. Winterfell changed. Chimneys breathed warm plumes. Hothouse gardens sprouted where frost ought to rule. Under high stone arches, Black Duran, so Rickon named the first dragon, flew short circuits, wings beating dust from rafters. Green Miraxes, Arya's favorite, perched on ruot-twined walls. Red Balerion allowed no child's hand, but Sansa's to stroke his crested head. Robb trained with Grey Wind near dragons, teaching the direwolf not to fear them. He found in their company a fierceness reflected, a bond that sharpened his own instincts. Bran watched from upper gallery and drew sketches, lines quick and sure despite his 9-year hand, the curve of wing bone, the blazing furnace of their throats. Master Luvine wrote daily, scrolls on diet, goat's blood warmed in kettles, growth rates faster than dogs, slower than horses, temperature tolerances. He fretted over tales of Valyrian horn, binding man to beast, spells long lost. Ned convened nightly councils. Should the dragons be hidden still? Could they be quashed? They were creatures of fire. Kill them, and you kill wonder. But perhaps save realm from fear. Yet to slay them felt kin to kinslaying. They were children, greedy, fragile, alive. Catelyn's counsel was steel-tempered with mercy. "Guard them here," she urged. "Let the north shelter them where few would dare trespass." And though Ned knew the wall guarded only against what lay without, not within, he agreed. One dawn, Balerion shattered his iron perch and rose against the roof vault, wings beating thunder. His roar split banners. Heat burst forth, torches ignited unbidden. He landed amid tables and loosed a gout of flame that licked harmlessly along stone. Yet the spectacle drew half the keep. Stark men cheered despite themselves. Fear could not stand long against awe. Ned watched and understood. Secrecy was ending. Soon, letters sealed heavy with wax would bear the direwolf sigil south, inviting kings and lords to see with their own eyes before rumor painted dragons as demons. Yet time was short. Robert was already on the King's Road, riding to Winterfell for old friendship and new office. Ned pondered sleepless beneath dim stars. How would the king greet fire hatched beyond his reach? Would Robert, haunted by a war fought to end Targaryen rule, see only ghosts of dead children? Or would he marvel? He feared he knew. The first snow of the new winter fell as Robert Baratheon's column crested the ridge over Winterfell. Drums thumped, banners snapped, knights in golden armor and guards in antlered helms glinted through swirling white. The yard bustled, servants forming lines, Stark retainers in sable cloaks. Catelyn flanked Ned. Their children assembled, wolves at heel. A hush spread when the king's war horn sounded. Hooves clattered through the gatehouse. Robert, greed in girth but fierce-eyed, dismounted and clasped Ned in a crushing embrace. "Ned," he bellowed. "Gods, but it's cold. Have you nothing south-made to warm these bones?" Ned managed to smile. "We have something, your grace, and you will find it warmer than wine." Robert's brow furrowed. Cersei Lannister, descending from her white mare, narrowed eyes suspiciously. When Robert spied the 3 dragons perched along the wall above the gate, positioned there by Ned's silent order, breath misted before his beard, but no words came. Black Duran spread wings, launched, and landed on rampart stone with a hiss of steam. The king's retinue recoiled. Knights reached for blades. Ned raised a hand. The dragons regarded the newcomers curiously, small tongues darting. Behind Robert, young Prince Joffrey gasped. Myrcella clutched her mother's skirts. Tommen squealed in delight. Robert turned. Eyes met Ned's. He spoke low, like thunder rolling far off. "What madness is this?" "Not madness," Ned said. "Life, hatched here 3 moons past. They are ours to guard." Robert's gaze flicked to Cersei. Her face, beautiful, hard, showed mingled horror and calculation. Sir Jaime's hand rested on sword pommel. Dragons, Robert repeated. The word weighted a kingdom. Ned braced for wrath, for roaring talk of rebellions undone. Yet Robert's shoulders slumped, and wonder stole across weathered features. I never saw them in King's Landing, he murmured. Thought them gone forever. He laughed, abrupt and raw, shaking his head. 7 hells, Ned. You always did have surprises. Cersei found her tongue. Your Grace, these beasts are weapons. They belong to the Iron Throne. My throne, Robert snapped. He studied the dragons again, tiny, fragile still. The grin tugged his lips. They're beautiful. Ned exhaled slowly. But peace would not last long. Cersei's eyes promised storms, Varys whispered. Littlefinger scheme. Far across the sea, Daenerys dreamed of wings. North of the Wall, others awoke. Dragons hatched at Winterfell would change all. Yet for that moment, in snow-softened air, children of man and dragon regarded each other under gray skies. The direwolf and stag banners stirred together, and Ned Stark felt the weave of destiny tighten like a drawn bow. Arrow poised for flight. Days stretched to weeks. The dragons doubled in size, appetite insatiable. Sheep pens emptied, goats vanished. Ned struck bargains with hill clans, paying in silver for livestock. Tanners complained of hides scorched beyond use. But winter wheat sprouted green in heated fields near the keep. Hot springs channeled through new stone aqueducts warm soil. Small folk whispered Winterfell would never know hunger again. Robb devised drills, combining riders with wolves, and, dream born of new daring, dragons overhead. Jon tested saddle straps of boiled leather, ran after a fall that broke his legs, lay in bed and watched ravens wheel. He dreamed of flying. Luwin penned letters to the Citadel, to Dragonstone's forgotten libraries, begging old lore of bonding spells. A smith from Norvos, famed for chain-making, arrived to craft collars of Valyrian steel and obsidian clasp, meant not to bind but to bear sigils for each beast. Wolf's head for Duran, sword and leaf for Meraxes, winter rose for Balerion. On a dawn wreathed in rose-gold fog, Jon ascended the battlements where Ghost prowled silent as breath. Meraxes, green wings half unfurled, balanced on parapet. Jon approached with slow surety. The dragon hissed, but softly. Jon placed a hand on warm scales. Heat seeped through a glove, but did not burn. He swung a leg over the sinewy neck. Below, stable boys cried warnings, but Meraxes surged upward, wings driving air in thunderclap beats. Jon clung, heart pounding. They soared above Winterfell's towers, over trees dusted pale, over the heart trees' red leaves glimmering under first light. Ghost howled far below. Snow whipped Jon's face, tears froze at corners of eye. Yet the exhilaration was a roaring river through him. He tasted freedom, feared gravity no more. When they landed, Ned awaited. He said only, "We must build proper saddles." And so they did. Winterfell became pilgrimage. Lords great and minor rode north to behold living dragons, to pledge fealty in exchange for warmth and wonders. Grain stores filled with southern bounty bartered for glimpses of flame hatchlings. King Robert lingered, drinking deep, laughing like the boy he once was beside Ned at the Eyrie. But his queen wrote letters late into night, and couriers rode hard south, bearing gilded scrolls. Old gods and new watched as lines bent in ways no maester's chart had foreseen. Then ravens brought darker news. In the mountains of the moon, clansmen spoke of blue-hide corpses that did not stay dead. At Eastwatch by the sea, a black ship returned unmanned save for 2 burnt bodies and a tattered black cloak. From the free cities came stories of a silver-haired girl walking unburnt from a funeral pyre, 3 dragons screaming at her shoulders. Fire had awoken ice. Ice answered. In a council chamber lit by flickering braziers, Ned traced lines on a map. Rob leaned in, gray eyes alight. John, half in shadow, rested a hand upon Balerion, now man-sized, coiled at his feet. Caitlin poured wine. Her gaze flicked from dragons to husband, worry etched between brows. "We cannot stand alone," Ned said. "If darkness rises beyond the wall, we must unite south and north." "Unite how?" Rob asked. "The realm squabbles like kittens." Luvine shuffled parchments. "Marriages," he suggested. "Dragon and wolf allied to stag, to eagle, to kraken. Dragons hatch for blood, not words," grumbled Greyjohn Umber. "Words are wind," Ned agreed. "But wind stokes flame." He set fingers upon the north, and then along the wall, feeling rough parchment like skin of the land. "Our fathers built this." He tapped once on Winterfell. "Now our children bear fire. With fire we may guard the living." Rob straightened. "Then train me, father. Let me ride." John met gaze. In those dark eyes Ned sensed Lyanna again. Wild courage, unyielding. He nodded. Thus began the forging of riders. Moon by moon, the dragons grew. Wings shadowed fields. Their roars rattled window panes. Yet hearts grew too. Rob laughed aloud astride Duran. Arya raced wind on Meraxes. Bran, borne on Hodor's back, touched each creature's mind in dreams. Seeing through blazing eyes, soaring where broken legs could not. Ned watched and felt pride like a sword's edge, tempered by fear. What father could not fear? But he also recalled promises. To protect, to guard, to let life bloom even when winter threatened. When the first white raven left the citadel bearing word, "The long night stirs," Ned Stark did not tremble, for Winterfell housed fire. And in the north, where cold gales howl, the seed of dragons burned bright against the coming dark, their flight lines crossing the sky like new constellations. The story of that burning had only begun. Cold mist curled along the frost-slick stones of Winterfell. As dawn bled pale gold across a horizon, the color of hammered steel. From a perch on the ruined tower, Bran watched the world wake. Snowmelt hissed in newly wrought gutters, Maester Luvin's design, channeling the scalding runoff from underground pools. The dragons kept perpetually warm. Steam drifted upward in phantom columns, mingling with chimney smoke, and the white breath of horses stamping in their stalls. Below him, the yard rang with life that would have seemed impossible one turning of the moon ago. Black Duran prowled the battlement like a dark tide, wings half spread for balance. His shadow painted the cobbles, and every stable boy's head lifted in unison when he leapt. A single effortless surge that carried him to the roof of the armory. Shingles rattled, dust avalanched in a soft flurry, and Rob's laugh rose over the din as he hurried after. Arm favoring a light burn suffered when Durin's new flame had struck stone too close. Sir Roderick, face half lost beneath his frost-whitened beard, barked warnings that might once have carried weight. Now they slid off Rob like water off wax. He was rider as much as lordling, and his feet moved with the confidence of a boy who had found his place in the song of the world. Bran's fingers twitched where they lay useless upon the furs across his lap. He closed his eyes, and for a heartbeat he felt what Duran felt. The girdling wind, the sharp sting of winter on scale, the triumphant thunder of a heart that beat like a forge bellows. It was only ghost sensation, some trick of memory and wish, but it filled him with such ache that tears pricked his lids. Hodor shifted behind him, murmuring a wordless apology he did not understand. He thought the boy cold, perhaps, and wrapped another blanket around Bran's shoulders. Down in the Godswood a different wonder stirred. Arya stood ankle-deep in the steaming pond, half hidden by drooping willow branches. Miraxes curled like a jewel-bright serpent around the base of the heart tree. The dragon's green scales glistened where water lapped them. Tiny plumes of vapor hissed where her belly touched the pond. Arya's hand rested against the narrow ridge of the creature's jaw, and she whispered, old tongue or nonsense syllables. Bran could not tell. Mirax's yellow eyes shuttered, opened, shuttered again in lazy contentment. Ghost watched from the bank, one paw in melted mud, head tilted. The white direwolf scented the air, ears twitching at every distant hammer blow. The bond between wolf and girl had always been fierce. Now it meshed with something older, a triangle of instinct that braided wolf, girl, and dragon into a single fragile harmony. Bran sensed it, felt the pull like an undertow in his gut, though he could not name what it foretold. Inside the great hall, breakfast simmered. Porridge, bacon, fresh baked oat bread steaming on long platters. Sansa sat at the high table beside Queen Cersei, pouring honey for the children of the king. Joffrey's lips puckered with distaste when the beeswax aroma drifted beneath his nose. He pushed the bowl away. They eat like commoners, he muttered, loud enough for the nearest Stark guardsman to hear. No lemon cakes, no sweet cream. My father should burn this place to the ground and build a proper palace. Sansa went rigid but did not reply. Her eyes darted to where Balerion dozed on the stone, dais behind the dais throne, a concession Ned had grudgingly allowed once the Red Dragon made clear. He would not sleep far from Sansa's scent. The creature's tail twitched, clinking softly where its tip brushed the iron collar worked with winter roses. Joffrey caught the movement and stiffened in turn, the pale hairs on his arm rising. Cersei laid a hand upon her son's shoulder, her smile brittle as first ice. Remember, my sweet, she purred. There are many kinds of power, but the truest is the one your enemies fear most. Let the wolves feed on gruel and ash. We dine on loyalty. Sansa's spoon paused halfway to her lips. She thought of Balerion's eyes, of the slow, rumbling purr he shared only for her. She thought of whispered threats she had overheard in the queen's chambers, of golden lions who would clip the wings of dragons before they grew. And she thought of the cold, implacable resolve in her father's face when he spoke of duty. Power, she realized, was often mistaken for the sharp edge of a blade. Durst power in Winterfell this morning pulsed inside living flame along the dais, and it answered to the Starks. Ned stood at the far end of the hall, conferring with Lord Wyman, Manderley, and Lady Barbary Dustin. Scrolls lay unfurled between them, wax seals broken. Ships from the Manderley fleets had seen a red comet slicing the sky above the Bight 2 nights past, a sign Wyman believed augured great change. Barbary dismissed omens. Her eyes were fixed on the ledger of provisions and the numbers Ned scrawled in neat stark precision. 8,000 bushels of barley shipped north, 2,000 sheep purchased from the coast clans, 50 barrels of spiced rum for the garrison at Deepwood Motte. The trader from Tyrosh sought double price for saltfish. Barbary argued for half again less, but the numbers were only one part of their worry. At Moat Cailin, Bannerman reported a column of gold cloaks, 200 strong, making slow progress up the causeway. Cersei had sent for them, claiming she required her personal guard. Others wondered if she meant to stage a silent coup. Ned's raven to King's Landing, demanding explanation, returned without answer. Behind Manderley's thick shoulders, Tyrion Lannister emerged from a side door, wiping crumbs from his vest. His mismatched eyes flicked across Ned, across the spread scrolls, across the hall, and at last came to rest on Bran's perch above. He raised 2 fingers in lazy salute. Bran returned the gesture without thinking. The imp's mind was always spinning. Bran could almost feel it whir, like the cogs of Maester Luwin's sky wheel that marked the paths of stars. Later in the day, Ned convened council in the solar above the library. The queen declined, pleading a sick headache. Robert, half drunk by noon, attended for half an hour, roared at the talk of food stores and levies, and departed for the practice yard where John and Robb were building new saddles under the smith's forge canopy. The king wished to swing a hammer himself, to taste honest sweat instead of sour wine on his tongue. He had taken to John as a brother's son, finding in the boy something of the stark steel he remembered from youth. Varys' letter arrived at dusk. A single line flowed in delicate purple ink. The dragon has 3 heads, yet the singer in Bravos has found her 4. Ned read it twice before Flame took the parchment. He stared into curling ash and wondered what new game the spider played. 3 dragons perched in Winterfell. A 4th, then, must mean Daenerys Targaryen, rumored alive and walking unburnt across the narrow sea. If she possessed dragons of her own, the world's board changed again. That night he walked the battlements with Catelyn, torchlight fluttering. Snowflakes drifted down, catching in Catelyn's hair. She lifted her face to the sky, catching one on her tongue as she had in childhood, before duty shackled hearts in iron. Ned smiled despite himself. For a span of heartbeats, they were only Ned and Cat, boy and girl in love with the quiet sanctity of first snow. Then thunder split the dark, Balerion rising behind them on creaking wings, Sansa astride his neck. The red dragon lofted above the godswood, banked once, and settled on the tower of the armory in a shower of sparks. Sansa slid free, balanced upon the ridge. She laughed, pure and bright and young. The sound filled the night like chimes. Catelyn gripped Ned's arm. You see, you worry and fret like any Stark, yet look, our daughter flies. Starks were meant for ground, he answered, but his gaze followed Sansa, and there was pride in it. Still, she flies. In his mind he saw other daughters, one dead with flowers of bloody snow upon her bier, another in golden southern silks, soon to bleed for politics. And his heart ached. 3 leagues south of Winterfell, the King's Road wound through a shallow valley. Frost-coated grass bowed beneath a stiff wind. The sun hung fat and red like a blood orange. Ser Jorah Mormont rided his mount at a rise, studying pale columns of smoke in the distance. Behind him rode a small party of sellswords, bearing the 3-fold talon standard of House Blackfyre, an obsolete banner they waved to confuse prying eyes. Their true allegiance belonged to merchants in Pentos counting coin for the queen across the sea. Jorah's instructions were explicit: survey the North's new power, report back. He had not expected living dragons. When word reached Pentos that winter wolves kept fire in their halls, Illyrio Mopatis paled like pastry dough. This changes our dance, the Magister muttered, fingering jeweled rings. He dispatched Jorah at once, promising full pardon for his crimes should he serve with diligence. So now the exiled knight gazed upon Winterfell, heartbeat thundering with impossible certainty. Yes, dragons were real, and they answered to Starks. That bode ill for Daenerys, though it brightened any Lannister plot. That night Jorah slipped into the courtyard disguised as a northern drover seeking employment. Motes of ember drifted in the dark. The forge never cooled anymore. He saw Meraxes chained lightly beneath the first keep. Arya sprawled on the dragon's spine, whispering wind-song to scaled ridges. He saw Duran scaling the rookery tower, snapping at ravens as old Nan cackled an ancient curse. He saw Balerion circling overhead, outline glowing like a coal set against the half-moon. And though shame and longing twisted in his chest, shame for his exiled name, longing for honor regained, Jorah felt awe eclipse all. For the first time in years, he believed something bright as sunrise might yet be forged from the rubble of his life. He penned his missive by guttering lantern. Dragons in the north, 3, small but swift growing, loyal to the Starks. King charmed, but queen hostile. Winter rising. He sealed it with plain wax and hid the scroll in a hollow pommel of his sword, then took service in the direwolf kennels, cleaning stalls while he watched. When the first of Cersei's gold cloaks reached Moat Cailin, they found the causeway heavily garrisoned. Ser Roderick held command, flanked by great giants, sworn spears, and a company of Cranagmen archers whose swampwood shafts whispered death across water. The captain of the gold cloaks produced a parchment heavy with the royal seal, demanding passage under the king's authority. Roderick read in silence, passed the scroll back, and said in ringing voice, "Winterfell grants entry to any who come in peace. Lay down arms in token, and you may proceed." The captain refused. He spoke of traitors and illegal sorcery. Roderick shrugged a tired shoulder and ordered the bridge drawn. In the morning, the gold cloaks found themselves ringed by mist and arrow, the Cranagmen having flooded the lowland overnight. They retreated, cursing marsh devils. From her chamber tower, Cersei heard the news through Ser Boros Blount. She dismissed him with a flick of her jeweled hand and gazed over the battlements. Toward the distant south, 2 golden lions flanked her hearth. In their dancing shadows she imagined wings. Dragons belonged to dead dynasties. She would not let them rise under the direwolf banner. Somewhere within these walls was a weakness, and she would find it. That same evening, she summoned Littlefinger to a hidden antechamber behind the library. The master of coin smelled of parchment and mint. He bowed too deeply, smiling. "Your Grace wished to see me." Cersei offered him a goblet of hot spiced wine. "I wish to discuss investment," she purred. "A venture to remove a certain impediment to the realm's peace." Littlefinger's smile thinned. Impediments can be costly, yet opportunity often hides within. "In this case," Cersei said, leaning forward so torchlight licked her emerald eyes, "opportunity has scales." Littlefinger's fingers drummed the cup. "Scales? Ah, our new menagerie. Dangerous pets. More dangerous to others than to me. I trust you can see to that." "I see many things," he murmured, "but even I have never clipped a dragon's wings. Still," he sipped, "there are always hatchlings within the nest who quarrel among themselves." Cersei's smile curved. "Then fan the quarrel." He bowed again. "As my queen commands." In the corridor outside, Tyrion listened, holding his breath until they part. The Lannister dwarf had friends in low places. Rats in the wall, spiders on the eaves. Information bolstered survival. He mulled what coin might buy if his sister plotted dragon death. For his cynicism, Tyrion had grown fond of the beasts. They stirred something childlike and foolish in his chest. Besides, the Starks showed him courtesy in a court full of daggers. He resolved to weather danger with wit, and perhaps a well-timed warning to Ned Stark would earn goodwill worth more than gold. North of the wall, Lord Commander Jorah Mormont stalked the ramparts of Castle Black, black cloak snapping. The night's wind carried faint salt from the shivering sea, but beneath it hung a new scent, smoke of pine and pitch. Rangers returning from the haunted forests spoke of trees scored by deep claws and char streaks frozen into bark. Something had melted drifts that stood untouched for centuries. Mormont turned the words over like dice in a cup and found dread in every cast. He ordered a raven to Winterfell. Its message, brief as a dagger thrust. Signs of wing. Wildlings whisper of white frieze walking. We must speak. In Winterfell's rookery, the raven arrived skinny and half-dead, feathers rimmed with ice. But its cargo set Maester Luwin pacing. That night Ned called council. The hall emptied of wine and laughter. Soldiers banked the hearth so conversation would not carry. Mormont asked for riders, supplies, steel. But Rickons, wolves howled unheard portents. And the dragons, huddled in the god's wood around the heart tree, thrummed restlessly, tails beating, fallen leaves into spirals. Jon felt it first. Lying sleepless in a straw-packed loft above the kennels, he sensed Balerion stir across the yard. A pulse like drums beneath deep water tugged him from bed. He called no one, donned furs, crossed the courtyard under thin moon. Snowflakes drifted, swirling in patterns that seemed to flee his passage. At the Godswood gate he smelled burnt cedar. Firelight flickered between trunks. Valerian raised his head when John approached. In flame-lit shadow, the dragon's eyes were twin furnaces. Ghost patted at John's heel. The direwolf's hackles bristled. 3 white figures stood beyond the heart tree. Not men, too slender, too still. Their flesh seemingly carved from milk glass beneath frost armor that caught moonlight and threw it back cold and sharp. Their eyes blazed cerulean. John's sword came free before thought, breath catching in his lungs like broken glass. Valerian hissed, throat sac pulsing. The figures tilted heads in eerie synchrony, assessing. One stepped forward, snow crunching not underfoot but shattering like glass, sound that cut the air. John held ground only because Valerian did, the dragon coiling, jaws parting. Heat shimmered around his fangs. Ghost growled war deep. The heart tree's red leaves rattled though no wind passed. John's voice emerged hoarse. You trespass holy ground. No answer. Their eyes glowed brighter, blue leaking tiny rivulets down cheek like tears of ice. One raised a hand of translucent bone. It pointed at the dragon. Valerian roared. Flame burst forth, searing white-yellow. Snow exploded to steam. When the fire cleared, the figures were gone. In their place, 3 mounds of melted snow hissed and sank, revealing only scorched grass and a single shard of crystal-bright ice that neither melted nor cracked. John knelt, touched it. Cold stabbed his skin even through the kid leather glove. He wrapped the shard in wool and ran. Master Lewin's diagnosis. The shard contained no water as normal ice. Its lattice thicker, crystalline like quartz. Dragon glass and iron could not scratch it. When placed beside a candle, it gave off mist, bluish, foul-smelling. Lewin declared it unnatural. Ned declared it a warning. 3 days later, 10 white ravens took wing from Winterfell. 1 to every major lord from Bear Island to Dorne. The message was simple. The long night stirs. Fire lives again, but alone is not enough. Prepare. Robert Baratheon sobered. Perhaps it was the winter chill. Perhaps the echo of Jon Arryn's stern counsel ghosting in his ear. He donned breastplate that creaked at the seams, but still bore proud the crowned stag. He gathered knights in the practice yard, ordered jousts by torchlight, insisted on drilling archers. For pleasure, he claimed. But Ned recognized fear wearing bravado. In quiet hours, Robert sought Ned's counsel. They walked the Godswood paths, where snow crunched underfoot and hot springs steamed. Robert's breath fogged. I thought the war a lifetime behind, he confessed. Now dragons, dead things, whispers of Targaryen witch across the sea. He rubbed his temple as if it pained him. 7 hells, Ned. I know how to swing a hammer, not how to weave fate. Ned clasped his friend's shoulder. You do what you always have. Fight for those you love. The rest is for the gods. Robert laughed, bitter and fond. Then may the old gods and the new both keep us alive, for I fear we'll need every prayer. Yet prayers were thin armor. In the cells beneath the first keep, a plot hatched as patient as frost. One of Cersei's mates smuggled a vial of thick green alchemical fire, wildfire, sealed for kissing a flame. Littlefinger provided coin. Qyburn, expelled master, provided formula. They meant to strike within the Godswood during moonless night, to slay the dragons in one sweep. They believed none would blame the queen when the fire consumed such beasts. The night came with sky black as raven feathers. Clouds strangled the moon. Snow muffled footfalls. The maid crept along root-snarled pathways, vial pressed to breast. Ahead, vague shapes of dragons slumbered round the heart tree. She stepped, breath in clouds, and an owl hooted, loud, Sudden, she startled, slipped, and the vial cracked against a stone. Wildfire met cold air. It birthed a scream of emerald light, so bright the world washed white. Flames roared sky high, curling tongues that burned snow to glass, bark to cinder. But Dragonhide did not char. It glowed hotter, brighter, as if rekindled from within. The blast flung Balerion upright, wings snapped wide. He shrieked fury, eyes molten. Meraxes and Duran rose together, a triad of wrath. Ned reached the yard in linen shirt, sword bare. Rob, John, Arya with wooden practice blade still in hand, Sansa in nightgown trailing half-fastened cloak. Guards poured after. Cersei stood on balcony, face lit sickly green. The maid burned, caught in living fire she had unstoppered. Wildfire ate flesh to bone in heartbeat. Her scream shook hall timbers. Then green flares died, snuffed, consumed by greater red-gold blaze the dragons released as one, as if inhaling sin to purge it. When darkness returned, tree roots smoldered, but survived. Snow hissed. Dawn's first light crowned the three dragons with halos of steam. They turned toward the castle ramparts. For an instant, their eyes found Cersei. She staggered back, face draining white. Ned lifted his sword toward the queen. "No more shadows," he thundered. "The North bleeds for no clandestine war." Robert stormed from the stairs, seized Cersei's arm. "Did you order this?" His voice boomed like sky split. Cersei shook free, spittle on lips. "They are abominations," she spat. "I will not watch my children burn for your northern pride." Robert raised hand. It trembled, fell. He turned away, shoulders slumping. "Get her out of my sight." Guards led Cersei, though she cursed until stone swallowed words. Tyrion found Ned after, beneath arch of the broken tower, lantern between them. "My sister errs in subtlety," he said lightly. "I, on the other hand, favor careful investment." He produced a folded parchment. A name. Sailors out of Mar claim the Silver Queen marches west with sellsword calls. "If dragons flock to dragons, as doves to grain, best prepare." Ned accepted the note. He studied the dwarf's open face and saw no lie. "Why, tell me?" Tyrion shrugged. "Because betting all one's coin on Lannister red is foolish in a storm. Besides, if the world must burn, I'd rather sit with the souls who warned it first." They parted without ceremony. Winter deepened. Comet, blood-red long-tailed, streaked the sky for 40 nights. Small folk named it the Sword of the Evening. Septons cried that the seven wept tears of flame. Northmen hailed it as Red Fang, herald of glory. "In the Weirwood," old Nan muttered, that dragons were only the first note in a dirge begun before the world was born. John trained daily. He learned to feel Balerion's muscles under his thighs, to grip the saddle's high pommel when the first true aerial dives began, to twist his body with the dragon's roll so ribs would not snap. He bled from gashes when scales scored his calf. He burned his beard, singeing when a practice blast misjudged. Robb suffered worse. One cracked collarbone when Duran bucked mid-ascent. But laughter bubbled from them in the healer's tent like mead from a barrel left too long in sun. Arya alone rode bareback, no saddle at all. She slipped along Merax's spine like water over glass. When Maester Luwine remonstrated she could break her neck, she replied, "I'd rather break it living than live dead." Ned tried forbidding her. She smiled. Her mother's smile from years before, and kept riding. Sansa spent hours in the rookery with Balerion, reading aloud songs of the Age of Heroes. Her voice, soft but strong, braided with the rasp of dragon breath, until they seemed two instruments tuned to one refrain. Lord Manderley, passing by, swore he saw the red dragon tilt his head like an attentive bard. Rickon, too young to ride, trained Shaggy Dog to chase flame at command, laughing as the dire wolf leapt arcs of fire without singe. Bran sat above it all, eyes closed, mind slipping somehow into the sky until he felt each beat of scaled wings as pulse of his own heart. Hodor hummed lullabies, unaware Bran soared leagues away. When Lord Commander Mormont's ranging party arrived, they numbered 20 men, half lost to ice wraiths on trail. They entered Winterfell gaunt, armor rimed with frost that never thawed even above the forge. They carried a corpse on a sled, a ranger named Othor frozen in a stance of attack, eyes blue and furious despite lack of breath. Jon recognized the dead face. He had shared stew with Othor on visit to the wall. They took the body to the cellars, bound in chains of dragonglass and black iron. Maester Luwin, Samwell Tarly by his side, recorded every measure of decay, every twitch. At midnight, the corpse opened its eyes anew, chains rattling. Flame from a single torch drove it to howling, but did not kill it. Only when Balerian's fire engulfed bone did the thing crack like kiln-burst clay and crumple to dust. Mormont addressed the Stark household at dawn. "If these rise in numbers," he growled, "the wall will fall. We need fire, and we need it flying." Ned listened. Robb, Jon, and Arya watched dragons circle above. A pact formed, 3 riders to the watch's aid for spring's first thaw. Sansa would remain as guardian of Winterfell with her mother. Bran would guide and dream, if dreams be worth steel. Southward, Tywin Lannister moved hosts. Gold cloaks retreated behind stone walls of Harrenhal, banners of Red Lion rolling like flame. He sent emissaries to the Reach, promising trade. In Storm's End, Renly courted Highgarden's roses with rumors of dragon knights. In Dorne, Prince Doran weighed dispatching his niece to Winterfell. Dragons, they said, might once more need riders of Dornish blood. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen gazed west from the prow of a cog named Silver Wind. 2 hatchlings clung to her shoulders, wings beating tiny gusts that ruffled her moon-pale braid. She had named them Viserion and Rhaegal. A 3rd egg lay quiet still, cold, refusing to break. She dreamed of a red comet guiding her to kin of fire. Each dawn the wind whispered Winterfell, a word she did not know but felt resonate. Behind her strode Sir Barristan Selmy, armor still bearing the faint scratches of his escape from King's Landing. He pledged sword and honor to the true blood of the dragon. They sailed for White Harbor, where Illyrio promised safe harbor under Manderly's secret banner. But seas are capricious. Spies ride swift, win. When word reached Ned that ships bearing a silver wolf-head figurehead approached the Bight, he set watchers on every tower. Winter was ready to receive the blood of old Valyria, though no one yet knew if blood would mingle in peace or war. The night before the arrival, snow fell heavy. Ned climbed the inner wall to find Jon brooding where parapet overlooked the godswood. Lantern light etched ice on his lashes. Balerion crouched behind like mountain. "You should sleep," Ned said. Jon shook his head. "I dream of blue eyes in black wood." "As do I." They spoke of the wall, of vows, of duty dividing father and son. Ned confessed his fear that to win one war they might lose another, that dragons bred arrogance as well as hope. Jon answered quietly, "Hope is worth the risk." He laid a hand on Balerion's warm flank. "If darkness swallows the world, what else have we?" Ned touched Jon's shoulder. "You are your mother's son," he said, and for the first time spoke Lyanna's name aloud between them. Jon's eyes widened. Tears threatened, but did not fall. They stood together, silently forging a harder bond than blood alone. Dawn found Winterfell, silver-white, crisped, ... The distant call of horns sounded, ships on the horizon. Dragons wheeled overhead, breath streaming like banners of flame. The north held its breath, and somewhere deep beneath the ancient stones, in the chamber of green crystal long since sealed again by Ned's order, the cracked shell of the green egg pulsed once, twice, then split open. A fourth dragon struggled free, smaller, frailer than the rest, scales glimmering pale gold with streaks of sky blue as yet unnamed. No eyes watched its birth. Heat from the heart of the earth cradled it as it chirped soft, seeking the voice of kin. The Game of Thrones had never known such players. Now the board groaned under the weight of legend walking, of night risen and day aflame, of promises made in grief and kept in fire. Winter had come, yet within its teeth burned the impossible tenderness of flame, a light that would either forge a new world in bright glory or devour the old in ash. The next breath of destiny waited only the courage of those who dared ride dragons through gathering storm. On Cubist Amdezi, the ice-bound docks of White Harbor lay hushed beneath a veil of pre-dawn mist when the cog's silver wind slid into berth, her hull glazed with rime and her sails half furled like tired wings. Longshoremen, cloaked in thick wool, stood frozen at the edges of lantern pools, staring at the figure on the prow, a slender woman draped in wolf-gray furs over foreign leathers, silver blonde hair wind-tangled across her shoulders, 3-week salt journey etched in the plains of her face. At each shoulder perched a hatchling dragon, one green bronze, one cream gold, tiny but fierce, pupils slitted against the torchlight, their hissing breaths curled into steam. Lord Wyman manderly trundled down the quay, girth swaddled in ermine, nostrils fogging in the cold. At his side strode Sir Barristan Selmy, helm tucked beneath one arm, white cloak now tinged gray from weather yet unstained by dishonor. Behind them, Jorah Mormont's boots rang hollow on the planks, the bearer of his sigil half hidden beneath a smuggler's cloak. When the gangplank thudded into place, Daenerys Targaryen descended first, a measured regal grace at odds with the weary sailors disembarking behind her. Viserion and Rhaegal clung tight, talons pricking the leather pauldrons she wore. She dipped her head, not quite a bow, not quite refusal, at Lord Manderly. "Your harbor greets a stranger in winter, my lord," she said, voice soft yet carrying. "I pledge no harm to the north." Wyman's watery blue eyes widened at the dragon's hiss, but he managed to smile. "The Manderleys are but stewards, my lady, or should I say, your grace." He ushered her into the light. "Winterfell awaits you, and I fear they have wonders you alone may answer." Daenerys' gaze swept the fog-bound shoreline. "So I have dreamed," she murmured. News sprinted ahead of them. Raven, horse, rumor. By the time the snow-dusted column passed the last river, the courtyards of Winterfell buzzed like a pot of hornets. Smiths hammered from dawn past dusk, forging chains meant not for bondage, but for greeting. Interlocking rings of Valyrian steel and raw obsidian to form bridles dragons would accept. Maester Luwin guided Tabomont, newly traveled from King's Landing under Stark protection. Through the forge fires, dragon flame at his command to heat ancient metal beyond any coal's reach. Sparks glittered like falling stars. Above the god's wood, 3 northern dragons traced slow gyres on frigid thermals. Valerian, now as long as a ship's mast, bellowed whenever the wind shifted from the south, tasting kin approaching. Duran banked, releasing a brief jet of fire, impatience incarnate. Meraxes answered with a screech that shook frost loose from tower eaves. On the battlement, Jon Snow shaded his eyes, breath pluming, ghost flanking him. The dire wolf's ears canted forward, noses twitching to foreign scent. From the King's Solar, Robert Baratheon watched alongside Ned Stark. The two friends shared a skin of warmed cherry wine. Robert's eyes, sunken these days, tracked the maneuvering dragons with boyish wonder quickly eclipsed by dread. "If the girl truly comes," he muttered into the cup, "I'll greet her with open hands, but the realm will not." Ned's silence weighed heavy as bearskin. He had offered every argument for parley, yet he knew Robert's ghosts, Rhaegar's shattered breastplate, Ilya's screams, the ashes of summer halls, still walked behind his ribs. Cersei was not silent. In her chambers, she rehearsed stratagems with Sir Jaime and Qyburn, diagrams etched on slate, flight arcs, ranges of scorpion bolts soaked in wildfire resin, pay lists for cell sales willing to chance frostbite for a queen's golden word. She studied them with a jeweler's eye, while resentment fermented behind her smile. When Daenerys at last rode beneath Winterfell's gate, escorted by Wyman's banners, Jorah at her stirrup, Barristan ghost pale in the swirl of snow, the courtyard fell to hush. Those who had seen dragons already still stared. Those who had not gaped openly. Ned stood at the head of his line, cloak of mottled gray spilling over mail. At his right, Robb, helm tucked beneath arm, snowlick on copper hair. At his left, Sansa, in midnight blue wool, Balerion perched like a living torch behind her. Jon hovered half a step farther down, black ranger leathers stripped against his frame. Arya balanced on a fence rail, Miraxes circling overhead. Daenerys dismounted. Her dragon's flared wings screeched once, an echo answered from above by Durin's rolling roar. Snow on the roof of the first keep avalanched in soft thunder. Winterfell now held 5 dragons. The air itself seemed to vibrate with their heartbeats. Daenerys' violet eyes found Ned's gray. No one spoke for the space of 10 breaths. Then Ned strode forward, hand resting on the hilt of ice, not in threat but habit, as he would meet any great lord. He lowered to one knee, to the strange queen. "My lady," he said, "Winterfell welcomes you and yours, fire though you be, to share our hearth against the dark." The words were simple, yet Robert's jaw knotted. Cersei, watching from a lattice balcony, whitened knuckles on carved fur rail. Tyrion released a breath he hadn't known he held, then snapped quill to parchment, adding another tally to his ledger of improbable survivals. Daenerys extended a hand. Ned rose, took it, felt surprising warmth, like sun-baked stone, beneath her glove. She turned to Robert next. Courtesy demanded she bent knee. Pride forbade it. Instead, she touched heart, bowed head barely. "Your Grace," she said. Robert swallowed words that began as fury and ended as awe. His gaze flicked from her to the dragons. "Girl," he said, voice hoarse. "The last time I saw your name, it was nailed to a pyre of dead children. Yet here you stand in my friend's yard with wings at your back. The realm will howl." Daenerys did not flinch. "Let it," she replied. "Howls fade when winter roars." Arya exhaled a laugh. Sansa elbowed her. The exchange might have ended there. Uneasy politeness, cracks concealed, but a trumpet call shrilled from the outer wall. A ranger, snow-caked and staggering, clutched a horn and collapsed. Jon darted forward to catch him. Sisters of the First Keep pried back furs to reveal a torso claw-scored, frostbite blackening fingertips. His whispers poured like smoke. Estwatch. The sea froze beneath them. Dead things on ice. Lord Cotter Pike cut down. "They're coming?" He coughed blood crystals. They tinkled like shattered glass on Jon's arm. Then his eyes rolled back, azure light flickering for an instant before guttering. The hush that followed felt brittle as midwinter sap. ... Mormont strode into the circle, fists clenched. "We can hold no longer," he said. "The wall cracks. Cracks. The dead wield frost like hammers. This fight is here. Ned's voice rang clear. Then we ride north with every flame we own. A council convened that very night. High lords sat shoulder to shoulder with sellsword captains. Knights watched black beside Kingsguard white. Bran was carried in, eyes milky with second sight. Beside him stood little Rickon, fierce as any commander, Shaggy Dog's muzzle peppered with frost. Ghost prowled behind Jon. Dragons dozed by the hearth, coiling tails round each other like living Ouroboroi. "I will take Balerion to the wall," Jon said before any could speak. "He knows the scent of the walkers." Robb slammed palm upon table. "And Duran follows. The North's claws are ready." Daenerys inclined her head. "Viserion and Rhaegal will fight at your side." She glanced to Arya, who grinned wolfishly. "That leaves Meraxes to guard Winterfell with Lady Sansa and Queen Daenerys," Ned inserted, though his daughter opened mouth to protest. He silenced her with a look that promised later reckoning. Robert stared across maps weighted by iron candlesticks. "I should ride too," he muttered. But his gut knew the wall's ice wind would kill him before the dead did. He drank hard and said nothing more. Plans spun like raven wheels. Eastwatch's evacuation, caches of dragonglass, forging of arrows tipped with newly mixed dragon steel, Valerian alloy fused by breath of 5 dragons to pierce ice crystal. Dabo Mat swore he could craft 24 spearheads in a night. Arya pledged to see 10 of them fly. Littlefinger listened, nodding at intervals, mind tallying costs, though his true ledger calculated different profit. If both dragon queens perished fighting walkers, who would broker the spoils of survival? Opportunity glittered. Cersei, barred from council, plotted alternate alliances. She sent Sarosny Kettle Black south, with sealed orders to Euron Greyjoy. Promise him a Targaryen queen in golden chains for a single swift strike at White Harbor with his black sails, and the Iron Throne would be his to plunder. Greyjoy, ravens winged through sleet. That same hour Bran drifted in dream beyond stone and skin, roots of the weirwood winding through memory. He stood upon a high ridge of night where storm clouds rolled luminous green. A figure carved of frost glass loomed, crowned in icicles, blue eyes endless. It raised a hand, the wind died. Behind it marched an army of silence. Bran felt the world tilt. He woke screaming, "The Night King rides an ice dragon." Maester Lúthien pressed milk of the poppy to Bran's lips, but the boy's words had already struck the council. Dragons were no longer sole province of fire. Somewhere in the dark, the enemy had claimed a corpse of wings. Ned ordered riders south to call every bannerman not yet under snow. Raven towers flared with activity. Wyman Manderley conscripted fisherfolk to man skiffs along the White Knife as floating fire barges. Barbary Dustin sent her nephew with 300 mounted lances. Even Lady Mage Mormont marched, daughters in tow, swearing the island bear would maul the night. 4 days later, the host set out. 1,000 spears of Winterfell, banners of Umber, Karstark, and Glover snapping bitter and sleet. Ragged black cloaks of the Watch threading the column's spine. At its heart 5 dragons, each at least barrel-chested now. Ned rode beneath their shadow, plate mail dulled to pewter by frost, heart pounded with the relentless rhythm of hoofbeats and wings overhead. Robert remained behind as Steward King, flanked by a grudging Jaime on one side and Sansa's gentle counsel on the other. Cersei's lips curled when she watched torches vanish into the storm. The march north felt like descending a stair of centuries, each league colder, older, quieter. At Queen's Crown they found hamlets abandoned, snowdrifts covering toys in doorways. At Mullstown they met refugees huddled around charred tavern remains. The dead had passed 3 nights earlier, silent blizzard. Jon dismounted to press water to a baby's blue lips. The babe's eyes flickered azure, froze. Its tiny teeth snapped at the cup. Sam Tarly smashed its skull with dragonglass, tear-struck, vomiting after. By the time they reached the wall, its height seemed a new continent. Torch lanes wound up the stone like veins of fire. Eastwatch's gate hung broken, ice shattered outward, hinges ripped by some vast force. Beyond, the shivering sea, a flat sheet of glacial glass stretching miles to horizon. Upon that plain stood a host of figures, so many the snow looked pitted with black nails. In their center, something immense moved beneath sheets of drifting snow, wings of translucent crystal. Each beat slow as grinding glaciers, tail leaving valleys in the ice. Its head rose, a crown of frost horns catching moonlight. Eyes burned lifeless blue. Bran's vision spoke truth. The Night King had claimed a dragon, one brewed in death and winter's spite. There was no time for strategy beyond what haste allowed. Riders formed shield walls at the broken gate. Archers knocked obsidian-tipped arrows. Above, Meraxes, Rhaegal, Duran, and Viserion circled. Balerion led, black wings nearly blotting half the night sky. Shon's cloak whipped as the great dragon banked into a dive, fire boiling in throat. He drew long claw, steel silver bright, bare pommel glinting. A war of elements ignited. Balerion's flame crashed into ice dragon breath. Frost so deep it hissed like rivers of broken glass. Steam cycloned. The Night King stood astride the dead dragon's neck, spear of jagged ice lifted. He hurled it. It whistled through swirling fog, struck Duran square in the chest. Scales exploded into shards. Robb felt the impact in his very ribs. Duran shrieked, spiraled, but Meraxes darted under, wings green streaks, Arya howling primal rage. She loosed 3 obsidian barbed javelins. They shattered harmless against the iceworm's hide. On the ground, white surged like a tide. Dead wildlings, long-lost rangers, gaunt forms still clad in rags of night's watch black. Grey wind and ghost leapt among them, ripping, dragging bodies into fire trenches, where Bear Island women drove them onto burning stakes. Ned held the center, ice shearing through brittle bone, each cut ending a nightmare that wore familiar faces. Yura fought at his side, silent. Redemption tasted like ash on his tongue. Cotter Pike, pale and blood-loss thinned, crawled to the parapet, clutching a horn bound in bronze. He blew once, deep, mournful. The sound carried across the ice plain. From western slope of the Shadow Tower, torches flared. Giants loyal to the watch waded into snow, hurling boulders. One rock smashed through ranks of dead like scythe, but the sea of corpses closed again. Balerion and the ice dragon clashed mid-sky, talons raking, flames meeting frigidity so lethal sparks detonated like stars. Jon guided with knees, shouting wordless fury. Ghosts' howl echoed below. And something inside the direwolf connected to something inside the dragon. An old, wild threat. Balerion twisted, dove lightning fast, jaws locking on the ice dragon's throat. Frost scales cracked. Blue fire geysered out. The Night King raised another spear, but Rhaegal crashed from above, Sir Barristan clinging, driving dragon glass blade down. The spear missed. His blade plunged into the Night King's shoulder. For a breath, the world seemed to pause. Inside the weirwood net, Bran's mind surged forward, latching onto the fissure where dragon glass met ancient magic. He poured memory. Every birth cry whispered beneath the red leaves, every vow sworn under the heart tree. Into that womb, the Night King's eyes glowed brighter, then cracked like frozen ponds under boot. Each, unlike any living thing, erupted. The ice dragon spasmed. Balerion wrenched free, flames surging so hot they blazed white. Fire raced along fracture lines. The ice dragon shattered mid-air, pieces raining like deadly hail. The Night King toppled, impaled on a shard of his own mount. He struck the frozen sea, splintering it. A roar rolled outward. Sound, shock, grief, rage, Every white stiffened, jerked, then collapsed as if strings severed. Silence swallowed the field, save for crackle of guttering fire and the stunned rasp of human breath. Snow began to fall again, gentle, unremarkable. John slid from Balerions back into drifts, knees buckling. He saw Rob kneel by Duran, alive but wounded, smoking hole in breast, oozing molten blood. Arya slogged through knee-deep slurry, arm bleeding, eyes blazing. Ned climbed broken ice, searching for sons, daughters, any breath of the living. Above, 4 dragons circled, battered but triumphant. The sky, once bruised by war, now glimmered faint dawn pink on the horizon. When the corpse of the Night King finally sank through cracks into black depths, sheets of sea ice shifted with groans like ancient gates closing. The war was not ended. Only one battle. Yet hope rose visible in every exhale, a fragile warmth defying bitter wind. Retreat to Castle Black was a silent procession of exhaustion and grief. Fires burned for 3 nights, cremations of friend and foe alike. Ash drifted down the wall's inner courtyard like winter's second snow. Duran survived. Tabo Mott hammered a breastplate of dragon steel to shield the wound until scales regrew. Barristan's beard was half seared away, but his eyes shone with purpose, unmatched since the trident. Arya bound her cut with strip of Sansa's blue cloak. She wore it like a trophy. In the solar of the king's tower, Daenerys, Jon, and Ned met alone. Ghosts slept at hearth. Viserion curled on beams overhead. Ned poured black tea laced with honey, hands trembling not from cold. "We have seen the edge," he said, and stepped back alive. "Yet more will come. If not dead, then those who covet what kept us living." Daenerys nodded. "My claim to throne matters nothing beside the living, breathing tomorrow. But the realm will ask who guards it. We must answer together." Jon's eyes met hers, violet and charcoal mixing like storm cloud midday sky. "Then we stand united. Let others count crowns. We count heartbeats." Ned closed his eyes, hearing Lyanna's final promise echo once more. He reached across, clasped their forearms. "So swear we all, that fire and ice together shall keep night at bay." 3 hands joined, dragon's rumbling purr resounding above like distant thunder made Tam. Beneath them the wall stood cracked yet standing, scarred but unbowed. And far to the south, in quiet chambers of Winterfell's deepest vault, the newborn pale gold dragon stirred, eyes opening to a world where dawn, for once, arrived brighter than the night which birthed it.